classy show. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Nelson Nightline, Shaw Cable's live bi-monthly phone-in talk show. I'm Morrie Zaitlin, and I'll be your host tonight, along with my regular co-host, Marianne. Voters go to the polls October 26 to cast their ballots for or against the Charlottetown Accord. Yet many Canadians are still unsure of what constitutional agreement really means. Tonight on Nelson Nightline, we'll look at both sides of the referendum debate and what it may mean to you if you vote either yes or no this coming Monday. But before we start, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Marianne, and our special guests tonight, Corky Evans, MLA for the region, and Kriss Witt, local independent business person. Good evening.
Thank you.
Earlier this week, we went out into the streets in downtown Nelson and went and asked different people what they thought, how they were going to vote October 26th. Before we start asking you people, we're going to show the viewers tonight what some other of their local residents felt about the upcoming independent vote.
Great.
All right. You're another undecided. You'll make your decision between now and the 26th?
You got that right, yeah, I sure will.
I'm going to vote no.
You're going to vote no. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No.
I'm going to vote for it, I think.
Nay.
And is there a reason why you're going to vote no?
They haven't told us what they're talking about yet, so until I see the facts, I'm not voting yes.
So you're an undecided?
No, I'm undecided yet.
I'm going to vote yes.
And why?
I don't know why. I just am. It's, I don't know enough about it to vote either way right now. But I intend to vote either way.
I'm not sure. I'm leaning towards yes, but I'm not sure.
I'll probably vote yes.
And is there a reason why?
Because the economy of the country has to be kept going.
Maybe.
You're undecided right now, you mean?
Well, so, yes.
How am I going to vote? Probably for the yes.
Is there a reason why?
Very difficult to say. I don't want the country to fall apart in any shape or form.
And you think the yes vote will hold it together?
I hope so.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. When it comes time, I guess I'll decide.
Oh, I'm going to go for it.
You're going to vote yes?
Oh, yeah.
And why?
Well, I think that the people that have been elected to represent us as best as they can have already made up their minds and have worked together as one to do that. And I think that that we should go that route. And if there's anything to be altered at a later date, then the representatives that we've elected will take care of that at that time as well.
I think I'm going to vote yes. I'm not sure, actually.
And why do you think you're going to vote yes?
I think the deal's probably good enough as it is. I don't think they should waste any more time.
I should say that I've been undecided up until recently, but I'm starting to trend more to the yes side.
And what reason's that?
Well, I just feel that we're at a point now where we'll never reach an agreement in the future like we've got now, in spite of the fact that I'm not happy with every provision of the proposals.
Why aren't you going to vote?
I don't have trust in any of them.
I don't mind saying yes.
You're voting yes. And what
Yes.
reason?
It's only a politician's deal, and we went over the whole rundown in Caslo's Scout Hall, and we got a good idea of what changes we can make in the future. So it's as good as it can be.
Enthusiastically and almost desperately, yes.
And why?
Oh, because Canada's in big trouble if we don't. Unanimity among all those politicians, virtually otherwise unachievable.
How we vote? No.
You're voting no and yourself?
I'm no.
And is there a reason?
Oh, yes. There's too much hidden that you can't know what it is. And because I don't think it's very democratic to be told how to vote. And I don't think it's very democratic either for the way they've run the whole thing. And my husband knows far more about it than me.
No. I just believe in a strong central government. We're giving too much away to the provinces, and by doing this, we are multiplying the government expenditure in operating all those different agencies. So we're not improving, we're really increasing the expenditure of tax money, but not for the benefit of the good.
I really haven't decided.
Undecided yet?
Yep.
You'll make a decision between now and then?
Well, I'll have to.
How will you base your decision?
I want to read the thing that came out in the mail. Decided.
And how will you make your decision?
By listening to the radio and watching TV.
All right.
Yay.
And why?
Because I think it's time to get this thing aside and get the economy going. Other priorities.
I'm going to vote yes.
And why?
Well, I don't really know why. I don't really understand a lot of this, but by listening to Christensen and reading different things that I've seen in the paper, I feel it's the best thing to do.
No.
And why?
They didn't give enough information, and I don't know, I think BC is getting ripped off.
No.
And why?
Because I don't like the way it's worded.
How are you going to vote on October 26th?
No.
Why?
I don't know yet. I just don't like being forced.
I plead the Fifth Amendment. I'm going to vote no.
Why?
Because I'm not satisfied with it.
I haven't decided.
And how will you make your decision?
I'll read some more.
Still undecided, believe it or not.
How will you make your decision?
Well, I'll have to familiarize myself a little more with the little thing they sent out and just listen to the debates and stuff like that.
I'm not sure. I'll have to decide. I've just got some information and I'm going to read that over, and I just got the Constitution information too. So until I get it all formalized in my brain, I will decide then.
I'm still thinking.
You're undecided. How will you make up your mind?
Oh, just by reading and listening.
And yourself?
No, I'm undecided.
I'm going to vote no.
Why?
I don't think it's spelled out clear enough. I don't think we understand enough about it to vote.
I don't know. I think probably yes.
You're going to vote yes. Why?
Yeah. Because pretty much you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. So
I don't know.
You're undecided right now.
Yep.
How will you make your decision?
Just by listening a bit more and reading more about it.
No, a resounding no.
Why?
Why? Because you can't just keep appeasing those people.
Yourself?
I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet.
How will you make your mind up?
I have to learn more about it. I don't quite know enough about it yet to make...
I think I'm going to vote yes.
Why?
I think a no vote sends a lot of wrong signals to Quebec and to the international community. And I think that whether you vote yes or no, it's not over anyway, and so there's a lot of dealing that's going to be done yet, and I just am interested in having it settled as soon as possible.
Decided yet.
And then how will you make your decision up?
Well, we're looking into it.
And yourself, have you decided?
Not really, but I'm going towards no more. Voting maybe.
You're undecided right now?
Absolutely.
How will you make up your mind?
I'm not totally sure. I'm not happy with either position.
I haven't made up my mind yet.
How will you make up your mind?
Well, I think I'm going to have to read a lot more about it than I have to this point.
No.
And why?
Oh my, don't do that. I just believe that no is the best answer. I believe Canada should stay as one country, not depart as Quebec, because BC's wanted to be, their own province or their own country, and I don't feel that Canada's one country. It shouldn't be two different countries. If one starts, then next thing you know, everybody's going to want to be their own country.
Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. With me again tonight are my co-hosts Marianne Bond, MLA Corky Evans, and Kriss Witt, an independent businesswoman. We're here talking about the October 26th federal referendum. Good evening again, Marianne, Kriss, Corky.
Good evening, Morrie, Corky, Kriss. As we just saw on our streeter interviews, out of 50 people, approximately 25% are voting yes, 25 no, and the 50% are undecided. Both of you here this evening have a chance to reach out to those undecided voters in Nelson. And Corky, I believe you won the toss at the beginning of the program, and you're on first.
Thanks, Marianne. Actually, I think going first in a debate is usually referred to as losing the toss. I'd like to say to the people at home, I think you're the most important people in this event because, as we saw in the interviews with the people on the street, a large proportion of our population is undecided, and it is for precisely that reason that we being people with a position, and especially I feel elected people, need to be available and accessible to the public to answer their questions. I am most decidedly in favor of this accord. I have heard some criticism out there in the public and on television that New Democrat MLAs might be somehow coerced into their support for the Accord by virtue of our party's position. I've also heard that politicians in general, conservative, liberal, NDP, seem to be in support of the Accord, so there is some kind of secret deal amongst elected people to present a united front. I just want to say that the last person who ever tried to tell me what to say was my mom, and she only limited her concern to that I be polite and that I speak well. My party does not speak for me. I'm here tonight because emphatically, having read the Accord, I decided weeks ago that I thought that it was an excellent arrangement for Canada. More than that, I think it's a precisely Canadian sort of an arrangement. One woman described it real well when she said it's a muddle-through Canadian sort of solution. It reflects, I think, accurately the historical makeup of this land. It deals with some of the historical inequities of this land, the provisions that the West gets or Quebec gets in the Accord are in concert with the way that provinces entered Confederation, and I think it's a roadmap for a future which all of us know will be a time of extreme change. With the roadmap, I think that we will be able to see our way through the future in a logical progression. Without the roadmap, I'm not real sure that the regions or the country will know precisely where we're going to deal with the stresses and strains of the future. I then am on the yes side because I think that it's a real good deal for Canada, and way more than that. In a time with Czechoslovakia splitting into the Czechs and the Slovaks and Yugoslavia unraveling and the Soviet Union and so much of the world breaking down in cultural and nationalistic sort of little separate groups struggling amongst themselves, I think Canada has a chance to show the world a sort of a muddle-through way of accommodating one another. And just like we do with the Blue Berets as in a peacekeeping function across the world, I think we might show the world that it isn't necessary to take things apart just because we disagree or speak different languages or have a different ancestry. So both in terms of the provisions of the Accord, but also the intent and the sort of ambiance around its creation, I support the Accord, and I hope folks will vote yes. We saw earlier many people say that they were undecided. I really hope that you folks phone in tonight, and Kriss and I can answer your questions, because more than wanting you to vote yes, I want you to come to Election Day with a feeling that you have a real good understanding of what the election is about. And if the answers tonight don't answer enough of your questions, please come to my office or Lyle Christensen's office and pick up copies of the Accord and read it in its natural form. We want everybody to have all the information they need.
Thank you, Corky. Kriss?
Well, I'm not a practiced speaker on this subject. I'm just a regular taxpayer like the rest of the folks, so I have notes, and I hope you'll forgive me if I'm referring back to them. I am a pro-Canadian, and I'm really proud to be part of a country that has a mosaic of cultures and traditions, and that people have been free to pursue their traditions in their own ways. The purpose, I think, of a constitution is to defend basic human rights of the individual from the predations of groups. Equality of all people is a matter of principle. Morals and ethics are the cornerstone of this great country. subletting principles to special interest groups. It's the beginning of the end. A is A. Equal is equal. Giving special groups or special individuals special rights is not as good as making the rights of every single individual inviolable. How can one reconcile Quebec's Bill 101 with the basic rights of the individual? People's rights are being trampled daily under the notwithstanding clause. One must recognize that the fundamental truth is that no one's rights are secure until everyone's rights are secure. Historically, and under this new agreement, control of Canada is vested in the House of Commons and the courts. The Senate gets to yell a little. Under the new formula, BC is given 95% of its fair share, while Quebec has been guaranteed 25% of the total, regardless of what its fair share is, and 33% of the Supreme Court of Canada. This is equal. One must remember that the granting of special rights to one supersedes the rights of someone else. Canadians must examine what special rights have been given to whom, on what grounds, and at what cost to the others. The rights of every Canadian to an ecologically protected future should not be compromised, must not be compromised by special agreement with any peoples. If you have a look at section 36.1 and subsection E, it states that without altering the authority of any level of government, Canada intends to protect the environment. The statement is an oxymoron. It's impossible. It can't be done. The Accord does nothing to encourage unity. There is no statement of indivisibility. There's lots of statements of these people have more rights than those people. These people have special rights. There's a provincial right to veto in perpetuity. This is going to create anger, not unity. Canada has an extensive system of social programs, social safety nets of which we're all proud. These nets, these programs, immigration, education, and medical care, and many others are being transferred or permanently ensconced under provincial control. How so can they then reflect national standards? How can they protect and reflect the rights and principles of a nation and its peoples if not controlled by the national pocketbook? How can national equality in education be achieved and guaranteed when it's under provincial control? Never ever forget that the man who pays the piper calls the tune. Under this new accord, every province has the right to say how many immigrants will come in, from what cultural background, what language, what educational level. If the movement of people between the provinces is to remain free in Canada, immigration is a national issue. It must reflect national values. The number of MPs and senators is absolutely guaranteed to increase. The number of MPs will increase by 42 if this agreement is ratified. Our rights to an equal say in the governing of this country do not exist. But our responsibility to pay is absolute. I think we've been sold down the river. They tell us to vote yes so we can get on with other things. Well, I'll tell you, the first thing they've got to do, they've got to figure out how you're going to pluck that tax goose so it can pay for the millions and millions of dollars we're going to require for those additional members of Parliament. They talk very positively about the affirmative action to force equal numbers of men and women onto the Senate. This does not ensure that Canadians will be represented by the best minds in the country. When I'm getting a cat from the SPCA, I check gender. When I'm looking for a great judicial mind, I use other premises. I wonder if tax dollars are being spent in an equitable manner in promoting and educating on this accord. Are they being used to convince us to vote yes because some politician says, trust me? They're using a lot of statements of emotionalism. Intelligent people do not base their decisions on fear. Scare tactics, when employed, only result in anger toward the person who has uttered such trash. They tell us the country's going to fall apart. It didn't after Meach, and it didn't after the FLQ crisis. They tell us the economy will fail. Canada is a strong country. We can survive these bouts of constitutional colic. Our neighbors all around and the rest of the world are worried about us. That's because they recognize this emotionalism as being irrational, and they're worried because they think we believe this kind of propaganda. They tell us a no vote is a prejudicial vote. Well, Native women don't believe that their rights are being maintained in this vote, and they're going to vote no. 55% of Quebec's people are going to vote no. But I'm prejudiced if I vote no? I don't understand the logic. I object to this kind of emotional blackmail, which states a no vote labels me as prejudiced against American Indians, Canadian Indians, Aboriginal peoples of any sort, the people of Quebec, women. I object. I believe in the rights of individuals. Do these blackmailers? In conclusion, I'm going to vote no because I think this agreement is of politicians, by politicians, and for politicians, and we, the people of Canada, have been left at the bottom of the pyramid to foot the bill. Thank you for letting me have my say.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Corky. I'd like the viewers to note that our phone lines are open right now. The phone number for you to call in is 354-4200. We're just going to break right now. We have a little film clip on the Constitution, another way of explaining it to the people. We'll roll that, and then we'll get into talking to both you again, and hopefully to our viewers. We'll start phoning in. 354-4200 to get online. We're going to break for a short while now. Right down to the second, too.
I told you.
27 million people in endless variety, scattered by an immense geography, joined by common concerns, sharing common values. In little more than a century, Canadians have built a nation recognized this year by the United Nations Human Development Program as the best country on earth to live in. In Canada, our fundamental law is the Constitution. It's a vision of who we are, how we share what we have, and how we govern ourselves. As our central written agreement, the Constitution protects our rights and spells out the responsibilities of our governments. Canadians have had serious concerns and often bitter arguments over exactly what our Constitution should say. But this year in Charlottetown, following many months of consultations, a consensus finally emerged. First ministers of federal, provincial, and territorial governments and Aboriginal leaders came to a unanimous agreement on what the Constitution should say. They hammered out a compromise, a complete agreement on 60 changes by which our Constitution could be brought up to date. The proposed changes are meant to respond to the concerns of Canadians everywhere. But the changes aren't law yet. On October the 26th, the agreement will be put before the people. The same question on the same day, everywhere in Canada. A national referendum to tell elected leaders whether or not to go ahead and make those proposals law. The choice we make together will decide the future of Canada for years to come. The first proposals in the Charlottetown Agreement relate to the people and the communities of Canada. In a special section called the Canada Clause, our basic values are set down, guiding the courts as they interpret our laws. The Canada Clause recognizes Canada's parliamentary democracy, the equality of women and men, racial and ethnic equality, Quebec's distinctiveness, the special place of Aboriginal peoples, Canada's linguistic duality, the equality of provinces, and respect for individual and collective rights and freedoms. A new social and economic union would set out social objectives like adequate social services and benefits, high-quality education, collective bargaining rights, universal health care, and the protection of our environment. And economic objectives like the free movement of people, goods, services, and money within the country, a reasonable standard of living, and a goal of full employment. Everyone agrees that right now our elected House of Commons and appointed Senate are not able to serve Canadians as they should. So a second group of proposals makes important changes to Parliament. Giving smaller provinces a stronger voice in national affairs, the Senate would be elected and effective, with an equal number of senators from each province. The number of seats in the House of Commons would be altered to reflect the growing populations in certain provinces, then reviewed every 10 years, so our population is fairly represented. The existence of the Supreme Court would be recognized in the Constitution for the first time. Judges would be chosen directly from lists submitted by the governments of the provinces and territories. In the new Constitution, the right of Aboriginal people to govern themselves would be recognized. If the agreement is accepted, the process to negotiate agreements about self-government would begin right away. All Aboriginal peoples would have access to the negotiating process. The right to self-government would not create any new rights to land, and Aboriginal laws would have to be consistent with federal and provincial laws, essential to peace, order, and good government in Canada. The basis would finally be established through which people of our First Nations could manage their own affairs with dignity and pride. In a major effort to reduce duplication and overlap, provinces, if they choose, could have exclusive jurisdiction over forestry, mining, housing, tourism, recreation, and municipal and urban affairs. And there would be greater provincial power over immigration, and labor market development and training would become a matter of provincial jurisdiction. Finally, making sure our Constitution stays relevant is a major concern. So proposals in the Charlottetown Agreement set down just how the Constitution could be changed in years to come. A new process would be put into place, making it much simpler for the territories to become provinces if they want to. And changes affecting the House of Commons and the Senate would require the unanimous agreement of all governments. The Charlottetown Agreement is the most extensive consensus reached in Canada since Confederation. The proposed changes to our Constitution are both sweeping and inclusive, intended to respond to the needs of all Canadians. They touch all of us, for they change the way we relate and the way we govern ourselves. First ministers and their governments have promised that if Canadians approve the proposals, their speedy passage would be assured. We would then have the freedom to focus our energies on other issues of social and economic priority. A constitution, like the country it represents, belongs to its citizens. The decision is now in the hands of the Canadian people. Future generations depend on the result.
You see the question on the air. Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. With me is my co-host Marianne Bond, MLA Corky Evans, and Kriss Witt. We're talking about the referendum coming up on Monday. We're going to start off with a phone call.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank Kriss Witt. I thought everything she said was done well. What bothers me with this is that the legal draft has had changes made in the last week or so, and some terminology has been changed. The social contract has now become justiciable, which will mean entrenched taxation, and the courts will be jammed with suits, and costs are going to skyrocket with that. The other point, taxation of natural resources is the one crumb that they've given to the new Senate. There's many other ways that the East can control our natural resources out here, with freight rates, import-export duties, to name a couple, environment for another, or just simply shutting down the resources with the fishery. And another thing, the supremacy of government, which we've had with the provincial municipal, has always been superseded by the federal. Who is the Indian nation's government going to be subordinate to? And I mention this with the fishing and the gambling. And last of all, government that governs all of the people has no right to spend tax dollars for the presentation of one side of an argument. And these same politicians that we're to be trusted have put us from for a $17 billion debt into a $460 billion deficit. And if it's taken this long to get a unanimity with them, and this is a miracle, think how hard it's going to be to change the amending formula. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that was quite a few points.
Somebody's
there.
thought out their piece already. Do you have anything to comment on that?
Well, sure. I'm not sure I discerned the question in there, but I'll try and address some of the points that the caller had. The caller was concerned about whether or not the legal text would be true to the intent of the accord. I heard on CBC Radio, and perhaps the caller didn't, and others of you, 3 constitutional lawyers being interviewed the other day, I think of all parties, certainly from all regions of the country, and none of the 3 of them, 2 women and a man, seemed to believe that the legal text had any serious changes at all from the nature of the accord. The one change that all folks, I think, have heard about was simply to clarify the Aboriginal women's concern that the equity clause in the Charter of Rights would not be overridable by self-government, and everybody seemed to agree that that was true. Also, caller, the legal texts are available, and you probably could get one from the MP's office or perhaps from the government agent. Certainly within the next week, you could get a copy of the legal text. And I know of no. I heard Mr. Wilson say that he thought that the legal text was acceptable in terms of the accord. He opposes the accord, but he doesn't believe that there's a trick in the legal text. And I don't think that there's some kind of hidden lawyer's trick there. Secondly, the caller is concerned about, I wrote down her words, she said, who is self-government, Native people's governments, going to be subordinate to? She said she was concerned about gambling and something else on
native lands.
On native lands. This is a very good question. I want to explain a little bit how this word inherent was negotiated at the table, because I heard Mo Sahoda explain it, I think, quite clearly. For some time, Indian peoples have been saying in Canada that they had the right to inherent self-government, and the courts, where it has been tried, have appeared to say that's a correct analysis. They wanted the right to inherent self-government to be put into the Accord, which would mean, inherent means it's theirs already. We can't give it back. We're not going to vote for this thing and give it back to them. It's theirs. If we took it away by superseding it with our own law, we did so without basis in law. On the other hand, the provincial negotiators, and ours as well, Mr. Sahoda as well, they wanted caller to box in, to set limits to what the nature of that self-government might be. So they asked for a clause which said that self-government would operate within peace, order, and good government, provincially and federally. That means now that Indian peoples have the inherent right to have the government, but the government has to function within the laws of the province or the nation. That is, that's not a perfect solution, but as Sophie Pierre said this morning on the radio, that is a compromise that brings us all closer to bringing all peoples under the law of the land. And I think it's a Canadian sort of a compromise.
Can we come back to this point, Corky? We've got another caller.
My bad.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yeah, am I on this?
Yes, you are.
I guess to start with, I'm sort of surprised that you showed a lot of the yes propaganda on your clip there while we were waiting to ask questions. I think that's kind of biased and unfair, but it seems this whole campaign seems to lean to the establishment and the, shall we call the elite. But I'll get on with my question.
Thank you.
On the TV, the making of a deal the other night, it showed Harcourt wasn't even considered or consulted during the negotiations. It sort of had Bob Ray and Barassa, Mulroney, McCready getting together, and they checked with Clyde Wells. Now, Clyde Wells, he's down the scale as far as the size of a province goes. And Harcourt didn't seem to be he seemed to be taken for granted. He's the premier of the third largest and fastest growing province. The others sort of pegged him as he'd go for anything. In fact, I think he did. My question is this how Harcourt's going to act when, for instance, we renegotiate the Columbia River Treaty with the Americans? Is he going to give it all away again? Is he going to come out, as someone said, with his hands up and his pants down? I'd like to just see what Corky has to say. Is this how his government's going to negotiate when it comes to hardball and looking out for the best for BC? Should I stay on the line or what?
No, we'll go offline. Thank you, caller.
You bet Corky has some thoughts on that. You know, we lived for the last few years until a year and a week ago in a province with a premier who was really good on television and probably would have impressed this caller. He always looked in the camera and he smiled and he told the people how fabulous and fantastic it was, and he looked good in the debates. And our government was shabby and dishonest and the laughingstock of this country. We now have a premier who is not a star. He is not the best speaker even in our caucus. He is not the best television persona in political life in Canada. He is a calm and a reasonable negotiator and administrator of this great province. And I think the people of BC are better served by calm, reasonable politicians than they are by charismatic stars with empty heads. Secondly, I recognize the voice of this caller, and I've known this caller for many years. You know that this is probably the first time in my life that anybody's ever referred to Corky Evans as the establishment and the elite of this country. 12 months and a week ago, I felled trees for a living. I don't believe that the elite of this country are choosing this accord. 1 week from now, the common people of this country are going to vote it down or vote it in. There is nothing elite about this process. That was the Meech Lake process, caller. My party and my leader and my federal leader opposed Meech Lake. This is a referendum. I think this is democracy. No matter what you think of me or my leader or whether or not he's a star on TV, this is democracy.
Thank you, Corky.
I've got a response I'd like to throw out there.
Okay.
I'm wondering why it is that our governmental leaders, our group leaders, were at this conference and we're at these meetings making these decisions of what they were going to put into this accord or this agreement, and we didn't have our constitutional lawyers there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in an agreement or making an agreement with somebody, I like to have my lawyer right beside me, telling me the pros and cons of the different things that I'm saying, yeah, okay, I can do that, or no, I don't think I can do that. It's my understanding that the lawyers were not overly prominent in those meetings.
Okay, we've got another call. We'll come back to that, Kriss. Good evening, Nelson Nightline. Hello?
Hello. Yes, I'd just like to say that I also resent the bit of propaganda that was just on for the to vote yes. I don't think it's necessary if you're trying to do an unbiased show. I'm voting no because I believe there's nothing specifically in the Canada Clause that really gets into the specifics of the protection of the environment, which I believe is probably the most important issue in the country today, whether you're a person living in Quebec, Native Canadian, or any other citizen of this country. And I'd just like to know if anyone has any comments on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think that we've had quite enough propaganda in our various advertising, and I think that when you're trying to say right down the middle, and drive right down the middle, we've all been trained that that's not right. You have to drive one side of the road or the other. Driving down the middle is not the thing to do. So I think that you're going to find it very difficult to get an advertisement or an educational tape which isn't right down the middle.
We have another call.
We looked at that tape and we felt we needed something. There wasn't anything on the no side that gave us some generics, and we struggled with that to give some information rather than, we didn't know what you people were going to provide as information, and we take the responsibility for putting that on. The no side doesn't have an organized tape, I don't think, but we're not defending it. Can I respond to the
environmental question?
Yes.
The caller is going to vote no, she says, because we're not strong enough on the environment in the Accord. And she felt that the environment was the singular most important issue in the country. I met people with the same beliefs last night in our young people speak out at Rosie's. I'd just like to say, caller, you're absolutely right that the Constitution, the Accord and the Constitution will not solve the environmental problems. And there are lots of other things that are left out. Disabled people, senior citizens, Aboriginal women, all of these groups and many others have said that their concerns excuse me, are not well enough addressed. Environmentalists. And some groups are split. The Federal Green Party says the environment is mentioned for the first time, so asking people to vote yes. The Provincial Green Party says it's not good enough and asking people to vote no. But understand, caller, this is not a sacred chalice or an altar or something. This is simply a format for Canada to make decisions in the future. And I wouldn't argue that life is going to be perfect. Life is going to be a struggle. On the environmental front, it will always be a struggle. It's a format in which to struggle. And if we vote no, it doesn't mean we're going to fix the environment. It means we'll wake up with the present system, the present patronage Senate, the present system of allocation of power, and the present system of the Indian Act. I think a person concerned about the environment would understand that it's somewhat tied to the question of Indian people's self-government, and the no vote is the status quo.
Okay, good. We'll come back to that. Kriss, I see you shaking your head, but we've got another caller we've got to go to. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yes, hi. I'm calling in as a no voter, and I guess what the point I'd like to make this evening is maybe it's just a real philosophical difference as some Canadians and the kind of country that we believe in. I believe in the equality of all people, in the equality of all races, and in the equality of all nations. And when we talk about whether it's French or natives or whoever, and we talk about their ancestors, well, to me, whether you believe in a creationist view of the world or an evolutionist view of the world, if we trace all our ancestors back, I think we'd find that we all come from the same parents, we all come from the same family, and we all come from the same race, and that's the human race. And I think that in this country, we need to fight racism. As we wag our fingers at South Africa and at Eastern Europe and what's going on there, we're promoting that in our very country by making tiers of people. Tiers with the natives, tiers with Quebec people. For an example, giving Quebec 25% of the vote. Okay, this is not based on population by representation. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, StatsCan says, well, it should be about 25% for the next 50 years. But we can also know that if we're going to take statistics based on the last 5 years, BC is growing a lot faster than StatsCan says, and in fact, Quebec is decreasing a lot faster than StatsCan says. What's wrong? What happens to democracy in our country? The Senate. Okay, all of a sudden now all the provinces are going to have an equal number of senators.
Do you have a question for either of our guests?
Well, I guess my question is to Mr. Evans. I would just like to ask philosophically if he believes in the equality of all humans, and if he believes in the equality of all people, and will he stand up for that?
Thank you.
Sure, caller. And I think that I am. I am not here today to sell you to vote the same way I do. I'm here today to answer your questions like this one. I'm supposed to be, I was called to the legislature a couple days ago. I believe that this is where I belong. And one of the reasons is to address this issue of equality, because I think it's foremost in terms of the Accord. We, all of the people here on Nightlines tonight, are people from the dominant culture, the Caucasian dominant culture that is running this country. You're absolutely right that the Constitution will make changes in equality, but I would argue that it's going to make changes in bringing people into the tent of equality. And as long as we have a large percent of our population living under the Indian Act, then I think we have them living under a racist construction. We have them living under governments imposed by Caucasian peoples on Native people. So I believe that the Accord will increase the equality of all people. And it isn't really neat, and it isn't really clean and pretty, and I can't wave a magic wand and make everybody equal, and I can't say that the Accord will work perfectly, but we're moving in that direction. I feel that the 25%, this is really Rafe Mair's issue. You know, he's the guy who started pounding this issue the day after the Accord was released. And I want to say to the caller, but also to Rafe Mair, we here are rural people. We know that if we go to Rafe Mair's idea, representation by population across the board, we are toast. Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal will run Canada. Never mind English or French or white or Native people or East or West. The cities will run Canada. The cities will determine the future of the Columbia River Treaty, pertinent to your question. We have in Canada recognized that that PEI should have 4 people in the House of Commons. We have made 4 or 5 provinces. We brought them into confederation with a floor under them. In PEI, if the population continues to go down and the people move away or die, and there's only 4 people left, we're going to pay them all to be in the House of Commons in order that PEI feel equal in Canada. We are not mad about that. We're angry about Quebec. So we need to look at why.
Okay, Kriss wants to respond before we go to another
Right, I'd
call.
like to respond to a whole bunch of things. One of the things is this is not Rafe Mayor's issue. This is the people's issue. Don't let anybody label it as somebody else's issue. It's your issue. You have a responsibility and a right to address the issue, to look into the issue and do your own research. As far as what Corky's saying, that if we were to go strictly by population, then the cities are going to run the country. This is true, and why doesn't this accord do anything to protect us? Why isn't it doing anything to say, well, we need to allocate our MPs according to some formula of land, acreage, plus the people that are on that land? Why is there no protection to that end, if that's what he's saying? As far as the rights of people, I repeat, I reiterate, A is A is A is A. Equal is equal. And when you've got section 1, 2B, which says Aboriginal people have rights, 2C, Quebec is special and unique, 2D, minorities are special and unique. Why do we need all this kind of stuff? There are 6 of them. If you're equal, you're equal, you're equal. A is A. Why are they denying a basic principle? Why are they giving us this kind of garbage? A is A.
All right, let's go to the
Do we
next.
have a call? Good evening, caller. Thank you for waiting.
Hello. First, I'd like to say that I was pretty disgusted with that ad that was presented in just now, and I was disgusted because at CD, we've had Esso, which is a gas station which is owned by Exxon, and it's a gas station that I boycott, and then a lot of non-union workers, and besides which it was just a presentation of the positive side, and in that context. But my questions are as follows. Number 1, I'm concerned about the amending formula. It seems to me that there is very little likelihood of ever changing the Constitution once it's decided as it is presented now. Number 2 is I'm interested in knowing about the Supreme Court, that I don't have a problem with three judges from Quebec, but I do have some concerns about the fact that the Quebec judges are provincially appointed, whereas the other 6 are federally appointed. And I would also like to know, do all 9 judges sit on making decisions with regard to our Constitution? And my third question is that I'm concerned about the status of the Charter of Rights and whether in fact it is what can override the status of the Charter of Rights, that is in the constitutional proposition.
Okay, thank you. Again, another mouthful of questions to go to.
I'd like to address that issue about the senators of Quebec and how they're being chosen. It's my understanding that the province of Quebec has decided they would like to appoint their senators. So their government is going to appoint their senators. Now, under this new agreement, the senators are going to be elected by the rest of the provinces at the same time that the MPs are. But in Quebec, the government will appoint them. Excuse me, but which government? The incoming or the outgoing? Is this going to truly represent the people of Quebec? Are they getting a fair shake here? Are they properly represented or not?
I forget Joy's first point, but her other points, amongst them was the Charter of Rights. She's asking whether or not we have diluted, I think is her point, that whether we've diluted the Charter of Rights by the creation of the Canada Clause. And if you will come down to our office, I'd like to give you a letter by Don Black, the critic for women's affairs from our federal party, addressing precisely that point. And she says, no, we are not. That all of the achievements in terms of individual rights that we have achieved through the Charter of Rights are not overridable by any changes in the Canada Clause. And people can feel assured of that. And you don't need to take it from me, a lot of people, very academic people, legal people, and senior politicians are addressing that point daily.
The caller's first point was to do with the amending formula, and I think there is some confusion out there surrounding that whole issue, which I think it's important to clarify. Could both of you speak to that issue as well?
It's my understanding that the amending formula is that all of the provinces have to agree, and if you don't have an agreement, you have no amendment, you have no change. Put 3 people in a room and try and get an agreement.
Okay, it's my understanding that that's not always the case, that it's a 70-50 for the majority of time and unanimity on, I can't even say that word,
yes.
on some, and I'd like clarification on that as well, because I'm hearing both sides.
95% of the Constitution is amendable by the old formula. The only things that will be under the new amending formula are the shape of the Senate, the Supreme Court, and House of Commons. And I feel that the caller's concern is valid, but you see, what happened in Charlottetown was we proved that it's possible to get everybody together to agree, and on October 26th, we're either going to prove it again or vote it down. I don't think that we want to have a ever-changing Parliament or Supreme Court system. I think we want those things to be pretty stable, and we do want the ability to amend other sections of the Constitution which are not changing. Excuse me.
We've got 2.5 minutes left. I want to give you each a 1-minute closing statement before we can close off. Or 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. Corky, would you like to go first? One more call?
Get in a quick call first and see if we can get a quick answer.
Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Okay, I got a couple of quick...
Okay, we've got 2 minutes left.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to ask Corky if he realizes that the Aboriginal population only comprises of 3% or less than 3% of the population in Canada. Another thing is I'd like to ask about is with the double majority, do you people realize that 4 or 5 senators could control the Senate?
Okay,
that's all I want to ask.
Thank you, caller.
Do you know those figures?
The population of Aboriginal people is, to me, irrelevant. I don't think, even if the caller is right, and I'm not sure if the caller is right, or whether it includes Métis people or people in the territories or Inuit people, but what difference does it make if we have abrogated some people's rights, 2 or 3% or 20%? I think it behooves us to honor those people and to make it right. And on the caller's second point, the caller is simply incorrect.
Okay, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. The amending formula. As Corky pointed out, the amending formula applies to those 3 things which control the country. The Commons, the Senate, and the Judicial. Of course it's important. This amending formula is going to stop the most important things of our country from changing. The next thing I'd like to say is, why the big rush? You take 18 years to raise a child. Why do we have 59 days to decide the future of a country? It's outrageous.
Thank you, Kriss.
Thank you.
Corky?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I think that this period of time has been real stressful on Canadians and also real wonderful. The amount of discussion about the nature of our society and the nature of our culture and what kind of a future that we want is to me quite wonderful. Please try and get through the next few days with dealing with the wonder, dealing with the information.
You made it.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
It has been weird
Yes.
and wonderful.
It's been excellent.
I think, for this country in terms of what's happening.
The thing that I'm impressed about is